Alright guys, Josh Rector. I'm going to be giving a class on the M500/590 shotgun. This class can also apply to pretty much any pump action 12 gauge. Most of the concepts carry over from one to another. Our task condition standard, we're going to conduct a PMI on the Mossberg 500 and 590 series of shotguns. Condition is given instructional videos and references. The standard is that you will understand the basic operation of the M500 and M590 family of shotguns. There's your reference for you. Obviously our risk assessment is low. We are indoors. Just watch out for trip hazards. Know where your emergency exits are in the event of a fire, natural disaster, shooting, anything. If we evacuate the building, our rally point will be the parking lot behind the pool by the GSAs and rentals. First, let's go.
Hey, bro. Drop the gun. Drop the gun. Drop the gun. Shot fire. Fire, 1040. Don't move, man. Don't move. Stay still. Shots fired, since we got one male down. 10-4, shots fired, one male down, 1046. Hey man, you good? Stay still. 1601 Central.
After the video ended, officers did render aid to this man, but that was a shot full of buckshot to the middle of his chest. He did not make it, and that is where this one ends.
So how's that for a little demonstration of the effectiveness of the 12 gauge shotgun? When you're up close, talking about unarmored suspects, subjects, you really can't beat the effectiveness of a 12 gauge. So what is the Mossberg 500 or Mossberg 590? They're based off of the civilian shotguns, which I just mentioned, Mossberg 500 and 590. They are pump action 12 gauges. They have a couple different barrel length options depending on the model that you get. Most are 18.5-inch barrels up to 20-inch barrels. There's several stock options from collapsible style stocks to pistol grip only stocks, standard shotgun stocks. 12 gauges are capable of firing all sorts of ammo. There's a huge variety of ammo that can be fired through them, from hunting loads to defensive loads to grenades to less lethal options like beanbags or rubber buckshot. The list goes on and on. How do you load the 12 gauge?
Hi, I'm Jeremy Stafford from Mossberg. Today we're going to talk about administratively loading and unloading the Mossberg 500 and 590 series of shotguns. Now, before we can get to the loading and unloading, we need to verify the condition of the shotgun. First thing we need to do is ensure that the shotgun is on safe. With the 500 and 590 series of shotguns, that ambidextrous safety lever needs to be all the way to the rear. Once we've verified that that lever is all the way to the rear, we can go ahead and open the action. To do that, we're going to depress the action release lever by pushing it all the way into the frame. Now I can bring that fore end all the way to the rear, opening the action. Once the action is open, I can physically and visually inspect the magazine tube and the firing chamber to make sure that it is free from any ammunition, and I can also make sure that there's no debris or excess lubrication. Now, before I load the shotgun, what I'm going to do is I'm going to verify I'm utilizing the right ammunition. In most cases, that information is going to be on the left side of the barrel. All right, for the sake of the video, I'm utilizing dummy rounds, and I'm also going to show you how to load directly into the chamber. In this case, I'm going to take this dummy round, brass to the rear, and just let it fall into the ejection port. Once it does so, you'll see that the shell elevator maintains control of it, and as I bring the fore end forward, it brings the shell to the appropriate level, and it allows those dual extractors to maintain control of that shell, as it moves into the firing chamber. Now, at this point, I have a round chambered. Even though there's no ammunition inside the magazine tube, there's still a round in the chamber, so I'm going to make sure that that safety stays on and my finger stays off of the trigger. To place ammunition into the magazine tube, I'm going to invert the shotgun so that that loading port is facing upwards. I'm going to take these rounds, once again, brass to the rear, maintain control, and use my thumb to press it into the magazine tube. I'm going to press it far enough forward that I feel and hear that cartridge stop snap as it takes control of the rear of the shell. At no point am I going to try to put more rounds into that magazine tube than it can handle. That's how you damage the shotgun. Now, at this point, I have a shotgun that's completely loaded and ready to deploy. Now, what about downloading and unloading the shotgun? All right, the act of downloading the shotgun is simply taking that round out of the chamber and securing it elsewhere. Now, to do that, I'm going to once again depress that cartridge lever. I'm going to maintain control of the shotgun between my arm and my body, and I'm going to ease that fore end to the rear. Once I bring it back, you can see those dual extractors maintaining control. And it's going to clear that chamber, and that elevator will come up and make sure that it doesn't fall through. I'm going to keep pulling back, and then once that elevator starts to drop out of the way, I can reach in and I can manually remove that shell from the shotgun. Once I've done that, I'm going to close the action. With the action closed, I'm going to now rotate that shotgun, and I'm going to reach inside of the loading port and access that cartridge stop, pressing it inward and allowing those shells to come out. Now, it's important to do this one at a time. You don't want to get overeager and try to control too many rounds at the same time, because it makes it difficult to control and you'll end up dropping rounds all over the place. Once I have all those rounds out of the magazine tube, I'm going to open the action, verify that the safety is still on, and give it one last check. I'm going to check both physically and visually the firing chamber and the magazine tube. Once I've checked and made sure that they're empty, I know that the shotgun is completely empty, it's safe, and it's ready to store. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Alright, so there's how you load and unload the Mossberg. And right here, you'll see the slide/action release. That's the button that he keeps referencing in that video. You can't see it very well in the video, so I went ahead and put this picture in here just to clear that up for you.
Let's go ahead and start with the stance. So when I'm looking at my target, I'm going to have my right foot for right-handers a little bit back, and I want to have a very aggressive stance, meaning I'm leaning a little bit forward, because again, that recoil is going to be coming back this way. So if I'm in an aggressive forward-leaning stance, I'm going to be able to absorb that recoil. Now on the grip, right hand goes right here, and your left hand goes right up on the forearm. I'm going to bring it up, and the mount part here is where the buttstock goes into my shoulder. Some people find if you lift up your elbow, that can create a pocket where this makes it more comfortable to seat the gun. And then finally, on grip with my left hand, I'm pulling into my shoulder to make sure, again, that that recoil is absorbed and the gun is properly mounted into my shoulder. And what we're talking about here with the mount is we want to make sure that the buttstock is flush against your shoulder, because here's what's going to happen if there's a gap. That gun is going to keep knocking you back and back and back, where if I have it right up tight against my shoulder, this energy that's traveling on this axis, it's going to come into my shoulder, down my spine, and into my hip, where all the energy can be absorbed. Now the final thing to mention is, now that we've got our mount and our grip, let's just talk quickly about making sure you have a good, what's called cheek weld. So your cheek comes down on the top of the stock here, so you can also see your sights, but also not have the shotgun punch you in the face. And so it's really important to keep your cheek down on the gun. And I know when all that explosion and the excitement is coming through when you shoot the gun, your instinct is going to be to pull your face away, but you want to make sure you keep your cheek on the stock. Now that you know the proper stance, grip, mount for a shotgun, if you're looking for a place to shoot, check out wheretoshoot.org to find a range near.
All right, and that cheek weld that he just mentioned is very important to get a proper sight alignment and sight picture. And also, if you are mashing your face down on that stock, on that cheek riser, as soon as you touch that round off, you will know it because it will punch you right in that cheekbone. So that, I would say that the cheek weld on this style of shotgun is probably one of your most important concepts to get mastered, to shoot the shotgun well and be comfortable with it. So let's talk about what type of ammunition you're going to typically see, especially when we're talking about military issued stuff. So your bread and butter, your most common type of shotgun shell is generally going to be your double-aught buckshot. The military uses a 9-pellet double-aught buckshot that is just standard unplated lead shot. Really simple, basic stuff. Shot is a term that refers to little spheres that are loaded into the shotgun shell, which are the projectiles. Then underneath the shot, you have what's called a wad, which is literally just a lightweight little piece of plastic that kind of keeps all of the shot together as it travels down the bore, and it keeps it separated from your gunpowder so that your gunpowder is not just all mixed in with your shot. Obviously, below your wad, you've got your gunpowder, and below that, the primer. And in a slug, you've got a bullet, basically, which is just a large chunk of unplated lead. Sometimes it's plated, but in the military issued stuff, it's generally not. And then below that, you also have a wad to keep the slug separated from the gunpowder. And below that, you've got gunpowder and primer. So the effective range of these rounds is very subjective depending on who you ask. You know, the Army will have one answer. Competitive shooters will have a different answer. But really it comes down to shooter skill. Generally with double-aught buckshot, you're going to be 50 yards and in. And 50 yards is really pushing it when you're talking about standard buckshot, like what the Army issues. Yes, you can probably get hits past 50. However, your spread of your pellets is going to be so large at that point that most of your lead is going to end up missing your target. Now, when we talk about slugs, generally what is considered the maximum effective range of a slug is about 100 yards. Realistically, with most average shooters, it's probably going to be considerably less than that. However, the system is capable of 100-yard hits and beyond. That's just going to, again, depend on the shooter's skill level. Now, with slugs and shotguns, you have two main types of slugs. You have a rifled slug, which is what you see here in this picture, that has little angled grooves cut all the way around the base of the bullet to impart just a little bit of spin on the bullet as it flies. Now, the other type of slug is called a sabot slug, which is literally like a sabot round from a tank. It's got a smaller caliber projectile that's encased in plastic that's basically split in half that separates away from the sabot after it's fired and leaves the bore. On a smoothbore shotgun, like what the military uses, you're going to use rifled slugs. It sounds backwards, but rifled slugs are for smoothbores and sabot slugs are for rifled shotgun barrels, which do exist. So there's your bread and butter buckshot and slugs, lethal ammunition for the 12 gauge. Here's what ballistic gel looks like when it's impacted with standard double-aught buckshot. You'll see the pattern is fairly tight. Now you see that area stretching rapidly at the beginning of the wound is called the temporary stretch cavity, and then the pellets penetrate beyond the temporary stretch cavity. Next, we've got a rifled slug impact on gel. So there you see that temporary stretch cavity as the slug penetrates into the gel. That overall penetration depth is going to be important later. You can see the energy of the round just lifted that huge block of gel up off of the table and threw it around. 12 gauges have a lot of kinetic energy to them. Alright, so here's how you get a sight picture with a shotgun. These military issue shotguns generally will only have a bead sight, which is only on the front. There's no rear sight usually on a military issued shotgun. So a lot of people end up having a problem with how do I line these sights up. And that's why I said earlier that your cheek weld is very important, because what you don't want to have happen is your head be sitting too high above the stock, and then you're going to be looking over the bead like you see in this image here. All right, that red section on this image is the flat part of the receiver. You'll have to see what I mean on the shotgun itself, but there's a flat part on the top of the receiver. You don't want to see that part when you're looking down the barrel when you're aiming. What you want to see is over here where you see where it says correct. You can see the flat part of the receiver here, but it is flat, like you're not actually looking at the plane of it, you know what I'm saying? So that's your correct sight picture when you're looking down the bore of a Mossberg 500 or 590. And there's a common misconception about shotguns that they don't have to be aimed. You can just point them in the general direction, and that is completely and patently false. People who say that don't know what they're talking about. The general rule for how much buckshot will spread out is about 1 inch per yard. That's pretty conservative. Generally it spreads less than that by a little bit, but a good rule of thumb is that 1 inch per yard. So for an example, if your target's at 7 yards away, you're going to have roughly about a 7-inch spread on your buckshot.
No special modifications to the end of the barrel, 18-inch barrel. I think 18.5 actually. What we're going to do is right now we're at 5 yards. All these distances, guys, because I know people are going to question it because it's the internet, have been checked with this Nikon ProStaff 7i rangefinder. So distances will be accurate throughout the video. I assure you, it's not just an estimate. So again, we're at 5 yards, and with that Rio buckshot, let's see what it does. Generally speaking, folks expect buckshot to spread out at about 1 inch per yard. So 5 yards, this is actually on the tight side. So we have this one piece over there. Very well could have been the wad. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we definitely have 9 pellets concentrated right there in the face. This guy would be having a bad day. Right about 3.5 inches of spread. So we're going to back it up and see what we get. 10 yards now. We're going to lower the point of aim a little bit so we can reuse the target. Definitely spread out a good bit there at 10 yards. Either way you measure it, we're getting right about 9 inches. So what we're going to do now is back up again, refresh the target, take another shot. Back at 15, same ammo, same everything. So we'll see what we get on there. My guess is we're going to have a pretty good spread at this distance. Let's see. My guess is that piece right there is the wad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So all 9 pellets on. That's certainly a good thing. Let's check out the spread and see what we got here. I actually was kind of thinking we might have lost one, but we didn't. So it's about 13 by 10, the spread on that one at 15 yards. So
there you see that 1 inch per yard general rule is pretty close to how this shotgun shot with that particular buckshot. So one thing that's often overlooked when people are considering using a shotgun is how it's affected by body armor. So soft Kevlar vests like what police wear or that will go under your shirt that are concealable will stop most shotgun ammunition, including slugs. In fact, they're even rated to stop the amount of kinetic energy and kind of regulate that down to an acceptable limit. So the National Institute of Justice has established for for body armor testing that for it to be considered a pass, it must have less than 44 millimeters of back face deformation. So it has to stop the round, and also the back of the vest cannot smush back into, actually it's a block of clay, more than 44 millimeters for that vest to be rated for that threat. And as you can see here under level 3A, which is a classification of soft body armor, it is rated to stop 12 gauge slugs. So if you're going into a situation where you expect that you may encounter body armor, that should definitely be something that you take into consideration. And a lot of people want to use birdshot for defensive or operational uses, which is a horrible idea. Generally, people that advocate for that are talking about, oh, it penetrates less walls, interior walls, so it's safer for innocent bystanders, which is absolutely true. However, it's also safer for the person that you're shooting with it. There's two organizations that really preside over the study of wound ballistics. They're called the International Wound Ballistics Association and the FBI. And they've established that for a round to be considered reliably effective against a human, it should penetrate 12 inches into calibrated ballistics gel. Calibrated ballistics gel is the agreed upon standardized method of testing ballistic effectiveness. And when you are talking about birdshot, there's pretty much no flavor of birdshot that will meet that 12-inch minimum. They've established that 12 inches into gel is the minimum amount of penetration that can be relied upon to reliably stop a human being. And as you can see in this image here, this is, I believe, number 5 birdshot, which is actually a fairly large birdshot. It only made it to about 6 inches of penetration, so not even half of the penetration depth that's needed for the minimum amount of penetration. Now, when you're talking about ammunition like buckshot and slugs, they consistently will reach and surpass that 12-inch minimum penetration depth. And that's why when we're talking about shooting people, you use buckshot or slugs. When you're talking about shooting birds, you use birdshot. All right, that's all I've got. Are there any questions?